Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin'. Today we're talking about how to catch bass when it gets really hot. Summer bass fishing is awesome. You can catch a lot of fish, but you can really catch big ones. This is one of the times of year where we can predict bass behavior like a science. We know exactly where they're going to be, exactly what they're going to be eating. You just have to go out there and do it. Now, that's the complicated part, the going out there and doing it. The heat of summer has arrived. It has set in and it is baking. How do you catch them when it's this hot? I mean, I'm sitting here on the deck of the boat, first thing in the morning, already cooking. And I'm out here early because an hour from now, I'm not gonna be willing to sit on the deck of this boat. It's brutal, but the fishing can be amazing. So what I wanna talk to you guys about today is what to do when this heat sets in, because a lot of people just quit fishing, and you can do that, that's fine. A lot of people turn to night fishing. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. But catching them in the heat of the day, right when it's sweltering, is how I catch some of my biggest fish of the year. I spend a ton of time in the hottest part of the day, in the hottest part of the year, out on the water. Now, I have to drink a lot of water to do it, but the caliber of fish that we're catching is incredible. So let's talk it through. Where are these fish? How do you target them? What baits should you throw? What time of day should you be there? Because those things matter. Unlike any, or more than any other time of year, timing is everything for me this time of year. There are entire parts of the day where I can't get a big bite, and then there's short windows where I catch all the big ones, and then I go back to catching little ones or nothing at all. So where they are in your lake depends on where you want to fish. You've got to decide between shallow and deep. There are fish in both locations, and there are big fish in both locations. Now, if I was going to split it up, in the summer, in the heat, if your lake has both shallow and deep cover, more than half of the biggest ones go deep. It's more than half. There's more of them out deep than there are shallow. But there is still a pile of them shallow. You can catch giants shallow all summer long. Obviously in a lake that has no deep stuff, they're all up shallow, right? So it depends on your fishery, but I'm gonna walk you through what I'm looking at, what I'm targeting in all those different environments. Now let's start with the night thing, because that one's very, very easy. I've got a couple quick tips for you. Then we'll talk about fishing in the heat of the day. Night fishing, what is that about? This time of year, if you can't stand the heat, go night fishing. If you've never done it, it can be a blast. Obviously, you're gonna be a little bit short on sleep. That's okay. But going out at night gives you relief from the sun, relief from the heat, relief from the bugs sometimes. It can be really relaxing. There's less people on the water, unless you're on my local lake, in which case there's tons of people out night fishing too, but you've got a great opportunity. You fish all the same likely locations at night. Here's what I do. Here's my quick tip for the night guy in terms of where to fish. The first thing I want you to understand is that daytime fish and nighttime fish are often not the same fish, which means that a really good day spot is not necessarily a good night spot, and vice versa. So here's what I want you to do. If you've never night fished your lake, I want you to get a map of your lake out, okay? If you've got good electronics, jump on your mapping, look at your lake. If you don't, jump on your phone, get on Google Earth, look at your lake. The most obvious spots on the lake: big offshore humps, main lake points, a point inside of a marina, the point by the boat ramp. Obvious spots that don't work in the daytime because of all the boat traffic. Try those first at night. Night fish will often use the most likely, most obvious spots on the entire lake. They can do it because of the reduced traffic. Day fish can't. They're set up in completely different places. So don't box yourself in when you go try night fishing to just go into the places you always go in the daylight. This is a completely different animal. Start with a fresh view of your lake and you'll be amazed by the result. Now, as far as what to throw, everything that you throw in the day can work at night. Everything. But if I was just going to narrow it down to a couple of my favorites, it's 3 baits, very easy. It's a wake bait, a jig, and a big worm. Those are my 3 biggest confidence baits. Let's run through those really quick. The wake, this is our wake bait, the tactical wake. This is a perfect example of what you would want to use. You're gonna throw this up if you're fishing shallow, obviously. Not if you're fishing out in the middle of the lake at night. But if you're up shallow, we're just gonna parallel cover. It may be that on your lake you catch all your fish in 10 to 15, 10 to 20 foot during the day, but at night they'll push up into 1 to 3 feet of water and you don't even know it. So I love to go up shallow with a wake bait and just steady retrieve. Just parallel shore, throw it over points, and you just want that clack. Just let that thing clack coming across the surface and those fish just unload on it. The steady retrieve with an occasional pause is my most consistent retrieve. I think the steady retrieve where we're getting the sound and we're pushing a big V wake on the surface helps those fish hone in and track it better than an aggressive, erratic retrieve, stop and go, anything like that. The consistent retrieve, they're able to track it and they take their opportunity. It's amazing what you can catch on a big wake at night. We have a blast doing that every year. Now, the other 2 for me, again, there's 50 things you can throw at night, but my other 2 confidence baits are the big jig and the big worm. And I don't get super caught up in color. Like, I'll throw a lot of black, blue, June bug, plum, but I'll also just go out and throw green pumpkin and brown. It's not like the crawdads change color at night, right? You can catch them on the exact same stuff. So don't overthink it. Don't go out and spend a fortune on night baits. Take what you've got and just go fishing. But the big jig and the big worm are really good opportunities. These fish in the dark will often take a shot at a bigger meal than they would in the daylight. So you can get away with a 10, an 11, a 12-inch worm. You can get away with that big honking jig where you're really connected to it. You really know what's going on. One thing I've noticed, just a quick tip, and then we'll wrap up the night portion of this. We'll go back to talking about the day, is that I never get on this bite, the worm and the jig, on the same night. In the same lake, it's a one or the other. I've always got them both tied on because one of them will always outperform the other. One will always shine, but I don't know which one it's going to be. So go out with both tied on, start slinging one, switch to the other, pay attention to how many bites you're getting. You'll find that on any given night, one or the other is the better performer. And once you know that, don't fight it. Just go fishing. Just start chasing. That's all you've got to do. Run that one bait and have a blast with it. I keep it that simple for the night fishing. Now, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the daylight. Fishing in the daytime in the summer is the most predictable bite of the year. My window of opportunity is from about 11 o'clock to 4 p.m. That's my window. That 5-hour window in there, if I'm going to catch a giant, that's when it's going to happen. Now, the vast majority of people, you're probably included, got on the water at first light and were off the water by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. You were headed home before my bite window has even begun. Now, I'll start with the negative because you need to face it. The reason that's my bite window is that is the absolute hottest, peak of the heat, miserable part of the day. It's hot. You are going to need a lot of water to do this pattern, but the fishing is incredible. Keep yourself hydrated, keep yourself covered. You guys see us all the time. Tim and I are always wearing hooded sun shirts. We're wearing those AFTCO gloves. I wear long pants. The vast majority of people watching tactical bass and just think we're insane. They don't realize that the reason I'm doing all of this, the reason why I'm wearing a hooded long sleeve is sun protection. I actually feel better at the end of the day by staying covered. Many of you know, this is just a rant for just a second, but many of you know I've already had skin cancer. I've had a Mohs surgery. I've got a big scar on my face where we had to take a big chunk of my face out to deal with that. It's a real thing. So you want to stay covered and stay hydrated as much as possible in the summer. And in fact, I wasn't even planning on this, but in the video description, along with the baits and the gear and everything, I will link you the main sun gear that we're wearing, because it's really important that you protect yourself. Now, with that said, that's the negative part of this thing. The positive is the fishing is out of this world. Now, I may not get a ton of bites. In the peak of the day, I actually get the least number of bites that I get all day, but they're the really, really big ones. And I've got some theories about why that is. I don't know that they're true. They're just my theories through the years. But I think as those conditions get really crummy, as it gets miserable, a lot of the small fish just stop eating, right? The bulk of fish just stop eating. They get lethargic. Those small fish are always running around picking off the easy meals. The big fish are a little slower. They take their time. They're more cautious. So when the small ones are eating a bunch, I think a lot of times you don't catch a big one simply because they didn't get to it first. In the heat of the day, when it gets really miserable and their location is predictable, we're about to get to that, the little ones aren't doing that, and the big one gets its shot and it takes it. I really think it's that simple. Regardless, let's talk about how we do this. So we need to split. Let's talk shallow and then let's talk deep, because they're very different, okay? Let's talk about the shallow thing first. You may be in a lake that has deep water and shallow water and you just prefer shallow. You may be in a lake that's all shallow. Regardless, there's a few different places that we're going to look. The number one thing that matters right now is shade. Okay, these fish want to get out of the sun just like you do. And they're not as insane as we are, so they're not choosing to go out there and bake. They're just stuck in it. So the deepest, darkest shadows is where the best fish will sit. In the springtime, we can look down a shoreline and you see all this good cover, and then there's that one really good piece of cover. You know that's where the giant is, right? She always takes the good spot. Okay, this is the same thing. When we are looking at shadows in the shallow water, we're analyzing shadows, the best fish take the best shadows, period. Okay, you would look at it the same way. It's just a mindset adjustment. Now, what does that mean? What are some examples of good shadows? Okay, if I'm fishing shallow cover, grasses, reeds, tules, things like that, what I'm looking for is what I like to call double shade. One of my good buddies, Matt, coined that term. It was something we were talking about on a fishing trip one time, and it just stuck and it has stayed with me forever. Double shade. So what that means is if I'm flipping a mat, you know, there's all sorts of grass matted up. You got hyacinth all balled up in a pocket, and you're punching, and there's a piece of wood sticking up out of that hyacinth. The biggest fish in there is going to be under that piece of wood, also under the hyacinth. Two shades. Hyacinth is creating shade, the log is creating shade. If I'm flipping a reed line and a little patch of floating junk is floated up in there, so they're getting shade from the reeds, but then they also get shade from this little patch of overhead cover, double shade. The biggest one will be right there. If we're talking about fishing docks, not all docks are created equal. If your lake has thousands of docks on it, it's actually incredibly easy to predict where the big ones will be. They take the best shade. They take the deepest, darkest shade. So if I'm looking at a run of docks, now depth can be a major factor too, but let's set that aside for now. If I'm looking at a run of docks, this is a single slip, double slip, floating dock. The next one's 3 slips. The big dock has the darkest shade underneath it. The biggest bass will all be huddled under that biggest dock, and they'll be all the way back in the darkest corner of the shade under that dock, depending on the time of day. That's where they sit. So you can actually predict where they will be more accurately than any other time of year. I think you've got the idea now. Now let's talk about some baits. How am I catching these big ones this time of year in and around all that cover where they are in that double shade? There's basically three things that jump out at me. If I'm fishing cover, you know, laydowns, blowdowns, grasses, reeds, you know, shallow cover, three things. First one's frogging. If I can get them to come up, I'm gonna do it. Why? Because it's fun. It's one of the most amazing bites that you can get on. Now, frogs, there's thousands of frogs on the market and they are not all created equal. What you are looking for is a combination of things. Your frog has got to be large enough that it's got some weight to it. It's got to have some weight so that if you throw it up on that cover, it's actually pushing down on the cover. It's creating enough of a presence that they notice it through the cover, because they're not actually looking at it. They're looking at what it's doing to that canopy. Number two is that the hooks have to be truly protected so that you're not catching in the junk all day long. You've got to be able to fish through that heavy cover efficiently, not constantly trying to get it out of snags. From Spro, that's the Bronzeye 65. That has become, in the last couple of years, that has become my confidence frog. I have caught so many big ones on that frog. This guy from Berkeley, that's the Swamp Lord. Last year, one of my buddies went on a tear with this thing, and I was there to see it, and I took note. This frog was noticeably heavier sitting on the mat than the frog that I was throwing, and he was getting bit better. But both of those frogs create a great presence. They're very weedless. You've got great color options. Notice the bluegill that's in my hand. If I'm gonna start somewhere, if you had asked me this 10 years ago, I would have had a different answer, but the last few years, my confidence in bluegill has skyrocketed, especially in shallow cover, especially in the middle of summer. Now, outside of bluegill, I keep it incredibly simple: white, chartreuse, and black. Not particularly in that order, one of those other three. So essentially 4 frog colors is all I ever throw. But if I was going to gamble on one right now, it would be Gill. And again, in the video description, I'll link everything we're talking about today: the baits, the apparel, all that stuff. And I'll give you my favorite color, my favorite size, the specific weight I'm using, you know, all those different things to make this very simple for you. Next up, if we can't frog them, if the cover's too thick or if they're too lethargic, they're not willing to come out, we're taking a creature bait and we're punching for them, okay? So a big old tungsten, typically 1.5 ounces, but 1 ounce to 2 ounces. I never go heavier than 2 ounces. There's not that many heavier than 2 ounces even available anymore, but there used to be. But I never go heavier than 2, because if it takes more than 2 to get through the cover, I can't get the fish back out. You end up losing them anyway. But 1.5 ounces is the sweet spot. If you can get 1.5 ounces through it, you should have no problem with the right rod and reel to get those fish back out of that heavy cover. But what we do when we're punching is you take that Texas rig and we're going in after those fish. So the same places that I would take that frog, I'll fish the frog over that junk. If they won't eat it, we go back in with a flipping setup and we punch through the cover to bottom right to those fish. I look for that double shade, I flip right into it, break the canopy, fall down to that bass. Color-wise, there's a lot of good options, but more and more I fall into that black blue, some variety of black blue when I'm looking for that really big bite. But you will find me throwing a lot of subtle black blues like this. I'm still not that guy that throws that neon blue all that often. I like those subtle tones, but that good punching, flipping presentation can get those really big ones coaxed out of that cover. Now, you're on a shallow lake that doesn't have all that grass and vegetation, but maybe you've got laydowns, standing timber, or docks. It's all about calling them out of those shadows. So the one other thing that I really like to do this time of year is throw the big bait. One being the wake bait, the other being the big soft bait. This is our tactical wake. This is an 8-inch mag draft. Now, a lot of people are freaked out by the full size baits, right? They're big. These work better than the smaller offerings. So a 6-inch bait is an amazing bait. It'll get a ton of bites if you can get right to the fish. But if you need to pull the fish to you, the larger the profile, the farther a bass is willing to come to get it. That's why the 8-inch is key. It's actually easier for me to get bit on an 8-inch mag draft than it is on a 6-inch mag draft on the pattern I'm about to talk about. Same thing with the wake bait. Bigger is better. Here's the deal. We already talked about where they are on those docks. They're in the dark shade, right? The bigger docks, the darker shade. If that dock is elevated and we can get under it, we can skip under it, great. Then you can put a bait right to where you know that fish is and you can slow roll it by them, be it slow rolling that mag draft or clacking that wake bait on the surface. That's great. But a lot of times you can't. Either the water's high enough, it's full pool in the summer and you just can't fit through the gap, or maybe it's a floating dock and it's physically sitting on the water. Either situation, you're restricted to fishing the outside edges of the dock. Why does that matter? Because you already know that's not where the big one is. She's not on the edge of that thing. She's under the darkest part of the shade, all the way back under that dock. So what do? We use the biggest bait to create enough drawing power that it's worth her time to swim from that shadow out to the edge of the dock and tag that swim bait. That's why the 8-inch, the full size swim bait this time of year. And again, wake bait or soft bait, I crush them on both this time of year. And it's not always a giant. I catch a lot of those like 2 to 4 pound fish on this stuff too. It would blow your mind. But if there's a monster under there, especially the hotter it gets, the more likely the monster is the one that will take the shot. Okay, we've talked about night fishing. We've talked about shallow fishing. Let's talk about the deep thing. Okay, fishing deeper water, fishing outside structures. That's where the majority of the big ones have gone. Now, there are big ones out there floating. You can go out with forward-facing sonar and fish for them effectively. You can target those suspended fish. Before all that technology, we used to target them blindly. It was a ton of work, but we did it very effectively. We caught monsters doing it. But let's take that segment of the fish and just set them aside for now, okay? Just take that, forget about it. Let's talk about the ones that don't require all those electronics because it's some of the biggest fish in the lake. Here's the deal. This time of year, again, what did we just say is key? Shade. The deepest, darkest shade. Now, shade does not always come in the form that you think. Overhead cover, a dock, grass, obviously that's shade. But here's another example of shade, the color line. Now, we're gonna do another video where we follow up. I'll go way more in depth on this subject in, I don't know, like a week or two, maybe. I'll do another one for you guys because this one's gonna become too long. That's too much of a rabbit hole. It deserves its own video. But the short version is getting away from the bank. As the shoreline is dropping away, there is a spot in that depth where the surface light is no longer penetrating and hitting the bottom. To our eye, it all just looks the same. But to the fish, if they sit here, the sun is shining on them. If they sit there, it's shining on them. If they sit there, they're effectively in the shade because the sunlight is not penetrating all the way to them. We call that the color line, okay? What we do is we fish main lake structures, main lake points, main lake humps. If you've got current in your lake, even better. Those places where current and main lake structures come together, the fish will stack up. But regardless, the fish will sit out on the color line. They'll sit right where it gets darker, and then they can look up and out, and they're looking into light. They can silhouette their prey. They can attack from below, but they themselves are protected from the sun, and you don't even know that there's a shadow out there. Those fish, main lake structure fish, are so easy to fish for. I've basically got a three-pronged approach to them. The first one is a big crankbait. That's my number one. This is the Azuma, the Z-Boss 22. You could also throw like a 10XD, something like that. Any of those really big cranks. But this bait in particular is one that I've just had tons of confidence in the last, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years. This time of year, I'm always slinging that thing. And then, of course, this is our tactical DD. The big thing here is that you're limited with a crankbait to where a crankbait can reach for depth, right? So if the Z-Boss says it goes 22, once I get to about 20, I'm losing effectiveness. The tactical DD 75, realistically, we're losing effectiveness at like 16 to 17 feet. If the fish are deeper than that, we can't really get to them. But there's another part of that, and that's the shallow end of the spectrum. So the tactical DD, we're going to call it sweet spot like 8 to 16, 8 to 17. We're going to take this guy, we're going to call it sweet spot like 14 to 18, 14 to 20, okay? If you're shallower than that, they also don't work because they're digging so hard that all they're doing is just like sliding across the bottom. They look like garbage. So if the bass are in the effective range of the crankbait and not above it or below it, the crankbait can be incredible. A burning stop and go retrieve can smash those fish. So I will almost always start there on the lake to gauge the fish's mood. And I catch a lot of big ones doing it. Bold colors, right? Your bold, sexy shads. A lot of those chartreuse and blue type colors. Bold colors, because the fish that set up in that shade looking to feed, they're ready to go. So you want to present a bait that they immediately see and have the opportunity to attack. We're not throwing ghost minnow here. We're not trying to creep up on these fish like we do in the winter time. They're there to hunt. We're just trying to present the meal to them. So I will usually start out with that deep crank. After that, you're going to see me throw this. This is one of my favorite things to do. We've already done a full-blown dedicated video on how to throw the wobblehead, the swinging jig head this time of year. This bite starts in May, runs all the way into August. I catch some of my biggest fish every year on the wobblehead. Now, what is the deal with the wobblehead? This is not just a creature bait. It's not just a crawl. We're not just slow dragging bottom. We're not flipping. This is a reaction bait. We take this wobblehead, we throw it out, let it hit bottom, and then we start cranking. I want this thing bumping and moving and banging into things like a crankbait. Color is critical. I catch the most fish on natural colors, but I catch my biggest fish every summer on June bug. No question. That is the X-Zone Adrenaline Craw in June bug. I've got that on the Dirty Jigs pivot point head. Depending on how shallow or deep you need to go, there's only two head sizes I use. I use a 1/2 ounce with a 4/0 hook. That's what this is. You can see it hides it beautifully. There's that hook point. And then if I need to go deeper or there's more current, I use a 3/4 ounce with a 5/0 hook. That's it. Those are the two sizes that I carry. And that one bait will get you through. Now there's 20 good baits that you can throw, but if I had to pick one, no question, that's the one. That's my setup right there. Bumping that thing along the bottom. Bump, 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 bump. It'll bang over something. Wham! They crush it. It's an incredible bite. You'll notice with both of these baits, they're baits that I can cover a ton of water effectively. Because again, heat of the day, a lot of the smaller fish chill. They're not in the mood anymore. So we're hunting for the giant that is still willing to take a shot. So I'm covering a lot of water. I'm running a lot of different locations, trying to pick off that active big one who's taking advantage of a shade opportunity to feed. Because the whole rest of the day, when it's low light, there's shade everywhere and all of the fish are feeding. That's not her time. heat of the day, peak of the day, when you're miserable and you need to drink more water, she's set up perfectly in a shadow, no competition, waiting for her opportunity. And I want to make sure that I meet her while she's still set up. So, fast moving, effective baits. The other beauty of a wobblehead, we talked about that effective range of your crankbait. The wobblehead can work above and below. So if my fish are shallower, I could throw a wobblehead all the way to the shore and wind it down. But I can also go out, if that crankbait stops at 20 foot, I can take a wobblehead out to 30, 35 foot and still bump, 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 be working it effectively across that bottom. No problem. So it's expanding my effective range, which means I have more places to fish. And then last, if I just know that they're there and they're just not doing it, I switch to a jig. The jig is the one where I'll just slow down and pick it apart. If I could only have one jig, it's a Dirty Jigs 1/2 ounce pitch and jig. That's an Arky style head. This color is called the Go-To. I've got an X-Zone 4-inch muscleback craw on the back of that, and I trim a little off. I take a 1/2 inch off the top of that craw. See, I cut the very top of that bait off. Take about a 1/2 inch off. That gives me this nice compact profile. It makes it harder for him to short strike it. This bait has this amazing consistent action to it. It kicks really well on the way down and the way up. If I'm hopping it, I get good flare out of the claws. And if I'm just slow pulling, I'm getting good profile. But if I already know that they're there, I'll take that jig and just pick it apart. And again, that setup right there, that color, that jig, everything. And again, I'll link it all in the video description for you. But it's that easy. It really is. Now, because we're targeting giants, the rods, the reels, the line, all those things are critical too. So in the video description, I'll give you a couple of my key combos that I use this time of year. Like my wake bait combo in particular, it's a St. Croix rod that I use. I use a very specific Victory model. The reason why is that for whatever reason, that rod is crazy accurate. And when you're casting around people's docks, you don't want to be banging into everything. Usually with a swim bait rod, it's like a lob and hope for the best. That particular rod is so accurate, I can just stick it right where I want on shadow edges every time. You know, my frog rod, it's super critical. Shimano X-Pride 7.3 extra heavy. Same answer I would have given you 12 years ago. Hasn't changed. That rod is a dream for fishing a frog. You know, very specific crankbait rods and wobblehead rods. And I can't link them all, but I'll link a couple of those really important rods. And then if there's room, I'll give you a couple of really good budget options as well for the guy who is on a budget but still wants that perfect action. Guys, this is an amazing time of year to get on the water. You're going to need to drink water. You're going to need to cover up and take care of yourself. But the fishing opportunities are amazing. I mean, notice, nobody's running past me. We're on the Tennessee River. You're looking at the main Tennessee River right now, but it's already hot. No one wants to be out today. Nobody. Giants are going to start biting in about an hour and a half, and I'm going to be there for it. It's an amazing time of year. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.